KeyBank Center gets taken over as much as we ever have seen before. A Saturday event against Toronto to talk about, and it's not going to be the most fun. Coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app, use the promo code Locked On NHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. 3-0 Leafs over the Sabres. That came after a 5-2 win. Sabres over the Devils on Friday and Saturday. Couple of games to talk about and a couple of games this week to look ahead to, including one night that should be a pretty cool night coming up tomorrow. Jeff Skinner's 1,000th game. We finally made it there, and barring something unforeseen, he will play his 1,000th game tomorrow, and the Sabres have a lot of cool things planned. Some roster stuff to get to as well. Here with the Locked On Sabres podcast, Sneaky Joe DiBiase. If you would like to reach out to the show, I got a good listener question for him a little bit later on from the text line. If you're not signed up already, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and you can text with us during the games and get some updates and good conversation throughout the days as well. The Sabres can't escape 500. Third NHL 500, that is 35, 35, and 5. They have gone win-loss in their last 4 games. Kind of the story of the season. They have not been hot. They have not been cold all year long. But the story of the weekend has really not a lot to do with the 2 games. It really is more about the arena. And we'll get to that. But in terms of the games themselves, before we talk about what happened Saturday, off the ice, if you will, the New Jersey game on Friday, it's a cool night. It's a cool night to be in the arena. It's a cheap game if you were trying to go. The Sabres win with a 4-goal effort from Tage Thompson. Thompson was very strong on the night. One of them was an empty netter, and the Sabres were able to pull away for a big win in terms of the scoreboard. And, I especially appreciated the Sabres downing the Sabres because I think that the Devils unfairly scapegoated Lindy Ruff earlier in the year. And I think they are getting what's coming to them for making a poor decision that really had nothing to do with the coach. It had everything to do with the goaltending. And you saw it in that game. Their goaltending is not very good. So they got that win over New Jersey. Thompson got his 26th of the season. It is kind of incredible that the year he's had has been so utterly disappointing. And I know that his teammates have not set the bar very high, but there's Thompson somehow tied for the Sabres lead in goals this season. He's got 26 in 64 games, by the way. Peterka has 26 goals in 75 games. So if you were to do the math on Thompson's 82-goal pace, he's at 33. So, listen, I don't feel great about Thompson's season at all. And I told you recently on this show, my biggest worry about them long-term right now is the center position. Do they have a legit number 1 center? And I don't know if Tage Thompson is that. But what we are seeing right now is a guy that has not looked right all year, that I've told you has forgotten how to skate, and clearly has been dealing with some injuries, is somehow sitting there with a pace of 33 goals. I mean, that's the floor. We are seeing the floor. This should be as bad as it gets. And if as bad as it gets is 33 goals, then Thompson might not be a legit franchise number 1 center, but you know that he's a pretty darn good center if the absolute floor is a 33-goal season. And we'll see. Maybe he can even up that a little bit more. Now, he and none of his teammates found a way to score on Saturday. They got goalied a little bit. 3-0 Leafs over the Sabres, and the goaltending was fantastic. Ilya Samsonov, who earlier in the year, in that 9-goal effort by the Sabres, got chased in the second period, had let in 5 in that game. He responded in Buffalo with the best game of his season. They were way above. He was saving tons of goals above expected, didn't allow a goal at all, made a bunch of high danger saves. He was looking really sharp the whole way through. Didn't give the Sabres a lot of second opportunities. Samsonov was fantastic. And overall, I didn't actually mind the way the Sabres played. I thought right out of the gates, the first period started, and the Sabres got down on the scoreboard not too far in. Only, 5 minutes in, it was 1-0. But I felt like before and after that goal, the Sabres were playing well. And the shot totals will tell you that. 34-22 for the game overall. Like, it wasn't a bad effort by the Sabres. They just ran into a great goaltender. And listen, this is what makes Toronto better than Buffalo. This is what makes them a better hockey team, at least in the regular season. The Leafs can have an off night, but they score on such a higher percentage of their chances that can have them win games like that, where Willie Nylander and Austin Matthews and John Tavares, the 3 goal scorers in this game, they're so good, they're so consistent that if you only give them 4 or 5 incredible chances over the course of the game, they can bury 2 or 3 of them and win it. They needed a good goalie performance too, but that's what comes with having elitely talented forwards that are that consistent. They don't translate to the playoffs, but in the regular season, that is what makes Toronto different. The Sabres don't have, right now, an Austin Matthews, a Willie Nylander, or even a John Tavares. They don't have 3 players like that night in, night out. They're going to generate chances, and then they're going to bury those chances. Thompson takes nights off. Cozens takes nights off. Everyone takes nights off on this team. That, though, was not the real story of that game. The real story of that game is what happened in the crowd. That arena, no exaggeration, was 85-15 Leafs fans. And oftentimes, I almost wish now I didn't do this, that when the Leafs fans take over the building early in the year, that 9-goal game, which in reality was probably more like 50-50, maybe a little closer to 60-40 Leaf fans. But I probably said I was 90% Leaf fans in there. I'm sure I said that, but I would have been exaggerating. This time, I'm not exaggerating. There were 90% Leaf fans in that building. 1,000%. When Sabre fans tried to get Let's Go Buffalo chants going, they were drowned out by the Toronto fans. And listen, this is not new. This is a team whose fans are resentful right now and don't feel like they are getting the best of a good deal. They're spending a lot of money on tickets and often getting nights like what we had last week where you go to watch them play the Senators and they give up 4 goals in the first 10 minutes and you want to leave the arena 20 minutes after you get there. That's often the experience of going to a Buffalo Sabres game. So there is no ill will for me on Sabre fans selling their tickets because that's a game where, hey, someone wants to buy them. You don't care who at that point. The Sabres haven't earned the right as a team to get a fan to ask who is buying the ticket. It's, someone wants to give me twice what otherwise I could get? Okay, of course I'm going to do that. And the Sabres have given their fans no reason at the end of this season to hold on to their tickets. So you get 90-10 Leaf fans to Sabre fans. But it doesn't mean it's not embarrassing. It is incredibly embarrassing. Paul Hamilton said this morning on WGR, and I agree with him that it's maybe the most embarrassing thing that's happened during Terry Pagula's ownership as owner. Is you arrived at a situation where your building could get taken over like that. Because when Briere and Drury were going strong, yeah, there were a lot of Leaf fans. I was at those games. It was probably 15-20% Leaf fans, which is a lot. But it was still a heavy Sabre crowd. It was still a Buffalo Sabres crowd. This is not that. This is a Leafs crowd through and through. Max Domi of the Toronto Maple Leafs tweeted out on Saturday night, Leaf Nation was buzzing tonight. What an atmosphere. What a night for 34. Huge W. Get this. He tweeted, best crowd of the year. That right there is a joke. That's such an embarrassment for the Sabres. You've got an away player saying best crowd of the year. Unbelievable. And on top of that, you have at the end of the game, Ilya Samsonov, who had an incredible effort in that night, he takes a little spin at center ice. He was the game's #1 star, and the Toronto fans are giving him a standing ovation. He stands there at center ice on the Sabres crest and raises his stick to the crowd and gets an ovation. On your home ice, an away player stood on your logo and held up his stick to his own fans who had taken over the building. Again, this is not surprising this happened. Leafs fans have been doing this for a while, and I would have told you that, hey, this game's probably going to be mostly Toronto Maple Leaf fans. 90-10, though. That's nuts. That is crazy. Maybe it was that way earlier in the season. I don't think it was, but we didn't notice it because the Leaf fans had nothing to cheer about because the Sabres scored 9 goals in December when these two teams met. So Dylan Cozens, Alex Tuch. I'll let you know what they had to say about this. And on the roster, why is Devon Levi still here? Well, I'll tell you why I like that Devon Levi is still here. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by Sleeper. It's nearing the end of the season. We don't even want to look at the standings. Not going to feel good about it. But regardless of where the Sabres are at in the standings, want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. It's the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper, our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Check them out. What players will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. Maybe you want to check out Jeff Skinner for this tomorrow in his 1,000th game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention, nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to a $100 match in your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms used for details and locational availability. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making this your first listen every day. Check out Locked On Sports today. College basketball. You've got Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese going at it on Monday night. Check it out. Locked On Sports today. Opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Okay, before we get to some of what's going on with the roster, you had practice on Monday. Interesting goalie situation going on right now. Dylan Cozens, as we continue on this pro Leafs crowd and what was a heavy contingent of Toronto fans in Buffalo on Saturday night. Dylan Cozens, in response to that, said, quote, "It's something. Hopefully we can get that kind of support one day when we're on the road. We're going to be a great team like that. We're going to build something special here, and we hope to get some support on the road like that." Cozens, though, continued. I know we have to earn it. This is good. I think that Cozens is not necessarily blaming the fans for not showing up when there's been a little bit of a contentious whisper in the air between the fans and the players all season long. Cozens said, I know we have to earn it. We all know in this room we have to earn it. We understand it's been a long time. We have to get that support back by being a good team and winning games. That's what it comes down to. We can work as hard as we want, but at the end of the day, to get that support back, we have to win games. It's going to be a big summer for all of us. I know we have a lot to prove. It's my favorite quote of the year. It's my favorite quote of the year because you know what? Even from myself, the way we've talked about the players being offended by the fans this year, the booing, the Granado chants, all of it, the way the salute thing, all of it. You just haven't heard a lot of this. It's not been, hey guys, it's on us. I mean, I know they probably think it and they say it a lot too, but Not to this degree. And any idea that it would be the fans' fault for selling your tickets to Toronto, I'm just glad we didn't hear any of it. We didn't hear anything even close to it. That is what you needed to hear from Dylan Cozens. I don't know if it's been addressed. Maybe Kevin Adams went down to the locker room in the last couple of weeks and said, listen, you are not making it players versus fans. I don't care how much you respect the coach. It's not happening. That conversation may have never happened. Maybe this was all overblown. Maybe this was, over exaggerated. Although I still tend to think that it wasn't. I think any idea that players were upset by what the fans were doing is nuts. And they were talking about being offended by it. But I'm good. I love this quote from Cozens. I know we have to earn it. It's going to be a big summer for all of us. We've got, it's a challenge to them. Guys, we've got to win the fans back. That has to happen. That's the attitude you want from this team. I will say, by the way, if my theory is that Kyle Okposo, by the way, is the one that is at fault for not nipping the player fan thing in the bud earlier in the year, maybe not the biggest surprise that this is happening when Kyle Okposo is not in the locker room. Just throwing that out there. It's a conspiracy theory, though. I don't actually know anything. So I liked hearing that from Dylan Cozens a lot. And it was a very, very similar sentiment from Alex Tuck when he was talking about the fact that the Leafs fans had taken over the building. It was pretty much the same thing. He said, obviously, we have to try to get the fans back in here to support us. It's been tough. It has for everybody involved, both sides. We're going to continue to work. We're going to try and earn it. So I liked, especially what I heard from Cozens. I liked what Tuck said too. No resentment towards the fans. They did a good job, a good balancing act in the media after that game where they would have been disappointed and upset, right? Hey, you just lost 3-0 in your own building and everyone was against you. You were getting booed by the opposing, not by your own fans, by the other fans. So I would have understood why they would have been frustrated. And they did they walked the line, showing how disappointed they are, how frustrated they are that this situation exists, while also showing everyone that they know that it's on them, that it's up to them to change it. The formula is not hard. It's not a hard code to crack. There's not much to it. Just win. That's it. Become a good team. Make the playoffs. And the Leaf fans go away because less Sabre fans want to sell their tickets. That's it. That's only answer. And Tuck and Cozens sound like they know it. Two of the leaders of the team. It's Dahlin, Tuck, and Cozens, I think, as we go forward here. So you had two of your leaders talking that way. One other thing to get to before we take a timeout, I want to get to Jeff Skinner a little bit, whose 1,000th game is coming up on Tuesday night. Devon Levi is still with the Sabres. I say good. Some of the media has been a little surprised by that. I mean, it's not much to be surprised by or not surprised by. It's not like it's a big deal. Season's basically over. But it's a little interesting because if you look at the Sabres schedule the rest of the way, they do not have any more back-to-backs. They go Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday. Back-to-backs are over. So there's no natural place to put Levi in. But what I've been telling you for about a week now is since the season for me was over, let Levi play a few games. And there are 7 games left. I'd play Levi in 5 of them. And I'll say the same thing I said last week. The story of Luukkonen's season has been written. And I didn't think he was that bad against Toronto. I didn't think he was great. It was an okay game for him at best. Ottawa obviously got chased early on, and then Edmonton, he got chased late. So in the last 3 games, you haven't seen the best of Luukkonen. But again, his story's been written. There's nothing he can do, positively or negatively, to me, the rest of the way to change what this season has been for him, which is he took hold of the number 1 job, he ran with it, and he is their starting goalie going into next year, no doubt, and probably earned a decent-sized bridge contract. That's Luukkonen's season. Nothing's changing on that front the next 7 games. So why start him in 5 of the 7? Why start him in 6? Why start him in even 4? I wouldn't get it. I'm not saying shut him down for the year, but I'd like to see Levi more because Levi, he's the one you still got to figure out a little bit about. As time goes on here, you probably want to ensure as much as possible that, hey, just want to make sure here Devon Levi is good to start 35 games for me next year because that's probably a good split, right? You have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen play, just doing quick math, 47 games next year. That's a good number. It's a good, healthy number for a number one goalie. Even if there's a little regression for him, I think it's a good number. And Devon Levi plays 35. That's a good split, I think, for next year. So give Levi 5 more games, give him more and more reps in the NHL and show him like, hey, man, we're going to be counting on you next year. So we got to give you your reps. We got to make sure that you're up to it. So I'd give Levi those 5 games down the stretch here. The other thing is Rochester really doesn't need him a lot right now. They will once the playoffs get going, of course. But as it stands, they're fine. If you're interested in where Rochester is in general in the standings, the North Division of the AHL, the North Division, they have 5 of the 7 teams make the playoffs. 5 of the 7 teams make the playoffs. And as it stands, Rochester's in 3rd. So what that means is, by the way, 4 and 5 play each other in the first round of the North Division playoffs. The 2 and the 3 get a bye and play each other in the second round. The 1 seed also gets a bye and plays the winner of the 4-5. So Rochester's in 3rd. They are 4 points clear with 8 games to go of 4th. So they'd have to do a lot to fall down. They'd have to have a horrible stretch. They just got to play 500 hockey the rest of the way, and they'll be in the top 3. So because they can't really fall down much more, unless, again, if a week goes by and that changes, then maybe this changes. I don't think the Amerks need Levi right now. I think they're fine going with Hauser and Tokarski through to the end of the regular season, and then you send Levi back down for the playoffs. So that's the way Rochester's going right now. They don't really need him, in my opinion, right now. And I don't think the Sabres need to keep playing Luukkonen. So to me, the best case scenario is that we see a lot of Devon Levi in these final 7 games. And I'm actually optimistic they will do that because there's no other reason for Levi to still be here. There's no other reason. I might guess he starts tomorrow against Washington, would just be my guess. Maybe they go every other the rest of the way. And probably sneak Comrie in there one because they probably feel bad for him. All right, when we come back, Skinner's 1,000. I got a really good text question that relates to Skinner and his upcoming 1,000th game. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. The sports calendar is loaded. You got the Final Four in men's college hoops. You've got the Elite Eight in women's college hoops. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese coming up on Monday night. A monster rematch from last year's national championship. Hockey, the NBA playoffs are approaching. I can't wait for that. And you can check it all out on FanDuel. Make it even more exciting by getting in on the action. Because right now, new customers at FanDuel get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $200 that you can use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Tuesday night against Washington, Jeff Skinner's 1,000th game in the NHL. The Sabres are telling fans get there about 5 to 10 minutes early at least, so they could see the ceremony before the game. First 10,000 fans, I believe, receive I think it's a Skinner winter hat. It says 1,000 on it. So that'll be very cool. Red and black night also, by the way, it'll be their final red and black game of the season. So very cool. I love Jeff Skinner as a player. I'll talk more about him tomorrow on the show. And I hope that he gets a good celebration because he's been one of my favorite players to watch in a Sabre uniform in this playoff drought. So Skinner, got a good question from our Locked On Sabres text line. And it basically asks, when you look back, you're ranking all-time Sabres. Who will be higher? In 15 years, you're ranking all-time Sabres. Who are you putting higher? Jeff Skinner or Jack Eichel? And I thought that was a really good question. I put a poll up at Locked On Sabres, and the Twitterverse doesn't think it's a great question because they are at 70% for Skinner and 30% for Eichel, at least not 99 to 1%. What's really the debate here? The debate here is how much do you care about how it ends? Because there's no doubt at all that Jack Eichel was a better hockey player than Jeff Skinner, both in a Sabre uniform and elsewhere. Skinner's a great goal scorer. Fantastic goal scorer. And I think last year took a huge step as a playmaker, although that's kind of regressed this year. Eichel, though, is just a complete all-around number one center. But how much do you care about how it ends? Because no one's ever going to like Jack Eichel again because of how it ended here and what happened after when he returned and then the hat trick and everything. Won the cup. Just no one's ever going to love Eichel again. Skinner, though, is lovable. Skinner, I would say beloved. I know they were making fun of him on that video clip. You know, the player saying beloved, like as a joke, but he's beloved. I think as much as you can be for a drought era player. If you're a Bills fan, you'll understand this reference. He's Kyle Williams. He is Kyle Williams. Play the whole drought and we'll love you at the end anyway. And listen, Skinner's story's not fully written. I might guess his career ends like Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams played the entire playoff drought almost from 2005 till 2017. And then when the team they broke the drought. He was a part of the drought breaking team, despite the fact that he's a career droughter. And that's going to be Skinner. I would guess that's going to be Skinner. I mean, if you look at, like, again, this question is kind of like right now, I might say Eichel, but Skinner's story's not over. He's got 3 years left on his contract, and I don't know. I just cannot see him being moved or someone taking that contract in the next 3 years. I would bet he finishes out his contract as a Buffalo Sabre. So what are the odds they miss the playoffs each of the next 3 years? I wouldn't bet it. I know we're not happy with them right now, and there are things to do, and there is maybe a coach dilemma coming up. No one's feeling great about them right now. But I will sit here and tell you that I believe they will make the playoffs in the next 3 years. I'll say this, I'd be surprised if they don't make the playoffs in the next 3 years. And I'd be surprised if Jeff Skinner is not on that team that makes the playoffs, scoring 20 to 25 goals at least. So, in my opinion, he's going to be a part of the drought-breaking team. And if you have a career at the end of it, which has a lot of goals, a fun player, always smiling, always getting in the other team's head. Yeah, he's not good defensively. Coaches might hate him. I don't know. Kruger does at least. I don't think Renato does. You got that. I think at the end of it all, he's going to be a part of the drought-breaking team. He's going to have a long Sabre career, goals scored. I think he's going to be a very likable player looking back in time, and a good player at that. So my answer would be Skinner. I think he can really earn himself a nice little spot here in Sabres lore, exiting a playoff drought if he can maintain being a part of that. And I, again, predict that he will be. So we'll see. Next year, the next year after that, and the next year after that. So he's, going to approach 1,500 games, I bet, in the NHL. It's kind of amazing. It speaks to him earning a spot in the NHL in Carolina right out of the gates at the age of 18. There are not many guys that did what Zach Benson did, which was make the league right away as a non-top 2 pick. Top 2 picks make it all the time, right out of the gates. Benson made it as a 13th overall pick, and it was stunning. Skinner made the NHL as a 7th overall pick, right out of the gates. And Benson, what's funny is, like, we're all happy with Benson, right? Like, I've loved Benson's season. He's a responsible two-way player. But Benson's not putting up a lot of points. Skinner walked in as a 7th overall pick, not top 2. 7th overall as an 18-year-old in Carolina and scored 31 goals and 32 assists. Like, he came right out and was doing it. And he's still going, scoring 20-plus goals. He'll probably get to 25 at least. He's only needs one more for that as this season ends. So I like Skinner a lot. I'm excited to talk more about him tomorrow and enjoy that game tomorrow night as well, as he'll have his 1,000th game. So if you've got a favorite Skinner moment, let me know what you think. I'll have mine for you tomorrow. Of course, a lot of people I think will probably be answering the 10-game win streak goal against San Jose, but there's a lot to choose from. I got a couple of good ones, so stay tuned for that tomorrow. So that'll be tomorrow's episode, a show dedicated to Jeff Skinner as we get ready for Sabres and Capitals as the season winds down. That's going to do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Reminder, again, you want to check out Locked On Sports today. It's the time to do it. College hoops, NBA playoffs, NHL, is a lot going on right now. Check them out on YouTube or the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for us today here on Locked On Sabres. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Locked On Sabres, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.